Thank you. So my name is Karolina Rzadkowolska, and I'm so grateful to be part of the new Entrepreneurship and Innovation Catalyzer. And last year, I became an entrepreneur myself. I have a coaching business called Euphoric Alcohol Free, and boy, has it come with a lot of learning curves. So I'm so excited to welcome our 5 expert panelists up here to share their lessons with us and what they could impart to you if they were to start their business today. So let's welcome back Curtis, Geraldine Radara from Holy Matcha, Hope Mago from HCAP Partners, Connor Hontelis, Double Take Recruit, and Samantha Pantazopoulos from Visor App. Welcome. So I'll start off with some few questions, and then we'll open it up to you for questions as well. To me, entrepreneurship is the crux of passion, creativity, and business. So can you briefly introduce yourself and share how your own passion led you to launch the business that you're running?
All right, I guess I'll start. My name's Connor. My company's Double Take. My passion was started when I was an athlete going into college. I learned how troublesome it was to even get to college and how it favored those that had the resources to do that. So I built Double Take to fix that problem as I got into USD as a freshman, and have built it up to where I ended up leaving the soccer team to focus on that full time now.
Curtis, I think.
No, there. I think you just heard a lot about me, but yeah, essentially my passion is solving inefficiencies in many parts of the world. Like I said, my new passion is essentially doing a lot of impact investing in places like Africa and in Europe, and then back here home in the States. So, and then a lot of philanthropy as well.
Hi, good evening. My name is Geraldine Ridaura, and I am the proud mother, founder, CEO, wannabe chef for San Diego's first and second matcha cafe, and I'm really excited to be here. Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Sam Pantazopoulos, graduated in 2017. I co-founded Visor with my cousin. It started when I was studying abroad. I was on semester at sea actually, and I had hated working out. Couldn't stick with it, no matter how often I tried. I was also on a very unhealthy diet, and I realized that if you don't have healthy food and you're not living well, you can never reach health. So we built an incentivized fitness app.
Hi, everybody. So I'm Hope Mago. I'm actually not an entrepreneur. I'm with HCAP Partners. We are a private equity and growth capital fund based in San Diego. We have backed over 65 entrepreneurs over the course of 4 funds. And so I look at how we help drive value creation and how we support entrepreneurs as they execute on their growth plans to scale their businesses. So my take's a little unique from the other people on this panel, but it's more focused from the capital provider side.
Mm-hmm. So looking back, what are some of the learning opportunities or challenges that you faced that really helped you on your journey, that you really needed to experience to get to the place you are today? And anyone who has the answer.
All right, I'll go again. So obviously I'm still a senior, so I still have a ton to learn, but I've been doing it for the last 2.5 years. Not many people know I've even had 2 other companies that totally failed. So I learned a lot through that. And kind of what I learned is as I'm going where I want to go, I have this huge picture of what I want to do. I want to basically looking at what I'm doing. I want to basically automate everything. I want to build this huge platform to house everything under one roof. Working on that now, but one thing I've learned as I'm going is, one of my favorite sayings is KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Bring it all the way back down to the basics, strip it down, make it easy to look at. This makes it easier, one, to integrate on top of it, and easier to actually do it. Because when I first look at everything I want to do, it overwhelms you. It overwhelms me, and I'm like, I don't know even where to start. But once you keep it simple, you break it down, it makes it really easy to start going on and building that. That's something I'm still going through right now, especially as I'm pivoting right now in my current company, but it's definitely something that's helped me out a lot.
I'll add on to that. So I'd say from my perspective, the most I've learned is from the deals that went bad. When you're thrust into a position where a company is going sideways, you have to replace management, you probably have to step in as a CEO, even though you're not trained for that. You're having to work with the team, keep morale up. People are probably polishing their resumes and looking for additional jobs. And you're trying to keep everyone around the table focused on turning a sinking ship around. Like, that's when you probably are learning the most and probably building a different skill set than you would really do whilst you're coming out of business school. So a lot of my experiences have come and been honed from those experiences. And so I feel it makes me a better investor, having had that background, and probably puts me in a position where I have a little more empathy around what are the things and thought processes that are going through the team at a company that's not executing and going well.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that I think one of the big challenges that we had out of the gate is that we were a bootstrap company, we were straight out of college, and we really had to learn a lot of these things for the first time. So I can say this week alone, I have worked in every aspect of our business. So from legal to accounting to tech to marketing to sales. And just learning as you do that while also like confidently delivering the product that you're building and selling is a balance.
I think the biggest thing for me is that learning that a failure isn't a failure. It's actually like a moment that you can learn from. And the more failure you can experience, the better you'll be later on. And I think that's where that original phrase, like, it took me 17 years to build an overnight success. Like, a lot of that is just failing over and over again. And, you know, like, I learned a lot from my failures, like, early in life. Like, you know, I almost dropped out of high school. I got rejected from every university I applied to. Had to go to the community college. And then, like, there was just failure after failure after failure. And I think it builds what I think is the most important quality in entrepreneurs, which is grit, their ability to be resilient in the face of failure. And but it brought up an interesting thing with me now parenting my daughters, because you obviously want them to be happy and successful, but like, you don't actually learn until you fail. So it's this weird paradox you have as a parent. And I also have the same thing with entrepreneurs as well that I mentor.
Geraldine, do you have anything to add?
A lot. With me, everything was a challenge, everything. And I actually get this question asked a lot. Like when I go into the cafe and people just ask me, like, I want to start my own business. How did you do it? And for me, it's very simple. I was petrified. It was never, ever in my blood, in the books, and I was supposed to go into medicine, but I hate blood. I never wanted to start a business. I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. Never did I ever consider that. It was never part of my thinking. But for me, everything just started out of a need, similar to what you said, a problem. It was my personal problem / need. There was no matcha in San Diego. Some people didn't even know what matcha was. They were like, is it like mate or something maca? And so the more I started seeing all these people that had no idea what this was, or like, oh yeah, the Starbucks one. And I'm like, oh my God, shoot me, please. No, absolutely not. And so for me, it was like 0 to 200 extremely fast, because I was just like, I have to do this with zero experience. I didn't know how to steam milk, anything. So for me, I had every single reason, had over 200 reasons, and I wrote them down. That's how I really do know, of why I should not do this, because of, you know, the 200 plus reasons. But I still did it, and I was okay with failure, even though failure was not an option. Like, I wasn't thinking I'm gonna go all in cold turkey, and it's okay if I fail, and I didn't have a plan B, but it's kind of like subconsciously I was okay with that. And you just have to push through those doubts, push through the noise that I had around me and the fear of the unknown, which is what we all have, is like the fear of the unknown. We're all pressured to, like, you have to pass school, you have to study, like we all have to pass. And I don't know, I joke around and I say, I think I just blacked out. I just went for it and shot for the stars and hoped for the very best, but I gave it everything. Like my health, I gave it everything. And I still am giving it everything, and I'm still learning in the process. So definitely just not being scared of failure and not being like, oh, but I don't know how to do this. Just do it.
You'll learn. I love also, Curtis, what you said earlier, and I think there's a saying in entrepreneurship that I either succeed or I learn. Those are the only two options, right? However, now looking back at the journeys that you've had, is there anything that you wish you didn't do or that you did completely differently?
I can answer that. I would say no. There are definitely things that cost us more money than they should have. There are things that took us a lot longer than they should have, and things that didn't go the way that we wanted. But I think that we learned so much from those things about how to better position ourselves, how to negotiate better the next time, that had we not learned those lessons, we would have had much bigger losses down the road. So I think everything happens for a reason, and we are where we are today because of how things unfolded.
Yeah, similar to what she said, we all learn through experience, and I think that psychologically we all reminisce in the past and like, oh, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have put my hair up in a bun tonight versus have it down because it's terrible. I mean, we all wish we would have done something. It's natural for us. It's kind of like if we think someone's going to punch us, we'll flinch. So it's natural. We wish we can always fix something. We can always change something. But I think that when you just don't overcomplicate it and you just act and you're conscious about looking back and thinking like, what have I learned? Because that's the biggest thing, is your mistakes are your learning experience, and you can't pay for that. That's life that gives that to you. So as long as you have self-awareness and what have you learned? Because if you're not learning, you're not growing. And if you're not growing, then you're stagnant. And if you're stagnant, then you are in big trouble. So you have to always make sure if you do make a mistake, be aware of that. And if you're being successful, still be aware of what got you from A to B, and maybe, try a different technique. You always want to, stay moving, but it's a balance. But definitely the experience of, I could have started Holy Matcha right out of college. Why did I start in my mid-20s versus my early 20s? The idea just wasn't there, but I had to go through, my mid-20s and maybe get my yayas out, maybe not party, get the partying out of my system, have a couple of jobs, have a couple of like crappy managers, and know how to be someone's boss. I mean, that's mind-blowing that I'm someone's boss. I train someone, I have all the HR rules and whatnot. So I would have probably been a terrible founder and a terrible boss if I would have started Holy Matcha at 21, 22 years old. But definitely just being aware of your surroundings and aware of your experience of where you've been and where you're going. I think it's the nice, healthy balance for a entrepreneur founder.
Mm-hmm.
I'll agree with everything else that was just said. I think everything happened for that reason. And even if you say, oh, I wish I had done this differently, imagine you did do that differently. Maybe the outcome wouldn't have been what you thought it would have been. It's hard to know. So to me, all those things are just learning opportunities.
Yeah, kind of, oh, wait, it's working at all?
There you go.
All right, kind of bouncing off what they said. Yeah, I mean, if I were to start today, something different, I would have done everything different. But looking back, I want to change a thing, and it's kind of started when I called my dad the day I was going to start Double Take, and was like, should I do this? I know there's already some other companies that are doing it. I don't know about this. I don't know about that. I basically just gave him a laundry list of why I should not do this. And he basically just said, look, do it. If you mess up, it'll be better for your next experience. I took that. He said it in much more blatant terms, a lot more like cuss words. But I took that into every single decision I made for Double Take. So when I did mess up, I knew for the next time, do it this way. And when I succeeded, I knew, okay, if it went the other way, what would I learn from that? I took that to every single experience. I think that's made me the kind of person I am today, to where I know how to go forward.
I think one thing I would add is people skills are important. when you're in business school, you're taught the technical skills, you're taught how to model, you're taught how to read financials, you're taught how to, build a business case and business plan. But I think at the end of the day, it's can you build consensus among your team? Can you get people to believe in your vision? Can you get people to buy into what you're trying to do? Because at the end of the day, for you to be successful, you have to have a team that believes in what you're trying to do. And that's a different skill set. And you can't force and just be, like a dictator, right? And tell people this is how it's going to be. And it doesn't always work, right? So you have to have people buy into what you're trying to do, buy into where you're trying to take the business and what the vision for the company is. And literally, if people are believing in what you're trying to do, the outcomes are so much better. And I learned that a little late. It took a while to understand that part. But I feel, anyone can come with a great business plan, but execution is important, and execution is dependent on how much your team believes in you. So I would say that's one thing to definitely keep in mind.
I love that. And Geraldine, you had such a great point earlier about how, creating your own venture or making any kind of a change in an organization takes a huge leap of faith and a lot of bravery and a lot of courage. Are there any mentors or influences or books that you kind of surrounded yourself to build that resilience in yourself to go and take that leap?
I'll never forget this. I probably shouldn't say this because I went to school here. I'm not the biggest fan of reading. Now with Kindle and, on the iPad, yes, I push myself to feed my brain and learn. But back then, I knew I had to have a little bit of experience. And a business owner that I met, he recommended the book Super Bosses. And now I still have it. I will never forget because I wrote the date, August 2017 and 2016, I'm sorry. And the thing is that it just completely scared me. Completely. It was realistic. And I think, it's just the fear of, oh my God, like, I'm going to be someone's boss. Oh my God, I have to LLC. I mean, the whole having a team. I don't want to be a dictator, but it's food and beverage. So I have to have every employee must wash their hands before they touch a drink. So definitely getting that balance and try for your team, your employees who you're supposed to lead and they need to believe in you and trust you, have them not hate you and understand, I'm trying to grow a team and inspire them. It freaked me out. It freaked me out a little bit. And so I turned to my mom, who I should have known better that from the get-go, it was a lot of tough love, but it's very true. And my husband's here in the audience and he knows that she's still very tough love. If I was a little bit scared or needed some sort of inspiration or role model, it's always been her because she just pushes if whatever you put your name, whatever you're involved in, you need to make sure that you represent me correctly and don't forget who raised you and you have an education. So, the typical thing that a mother would say, but she always pushed me for greatness. She always pushed me to believe in myself. And even right now, if I'm going crazy with ridiculous things, I will call her crying for 2 minutes. And then all she will say is, you chose this life, figure it out. And I just need to hear that. And then I just wipe my tears and I'm like, okay, boom. And I figure it out. So she is my role model. And I feel that if it weren't for her, I probably wouldn't be able to be sitting here because the self-doubt would just consume me. But she definitely keeps on pushing me for greatness and to keep on believing in myself and to remind myself, I got myself in this situation. Get yourself out of it and figure it out.
I'm definitely old school in the sense that, I listen to the podcasts, I read the books, but I think that a conversation is the best way to learn. So, even in college, I would reach out to people that had started businesses, some of which were named because they'd come to these events. Our first customer ended up being someone that I met who was speaking at this in 2015. And then I circled back to her 3 years later. But I think just reach out to people because if you are a student, they will meet with you. I still email people and I'm I'm a recent college grad. So they respond. And just putting your idea out there, getting feedback on it, that's the best way that we've learned. Kind of think of things that we may have not considered.
Hope or Connor, do you?
Book or mentor?
Just, yeah, the mentors or the positive mind frame that you need to find yourself in to take the big scary risks.
Yeah, I mean, I have too many people I could thank, but going back to the cliche, it's my parents by far. It's kind of looking to those that are closest to you to give you the support when you need it. The amount of times I wanted to shut the doors on double take, I couldn't even count. And going to those people who help you push through that, whether it's your parents, whether it's your closest friend, whatever it is, finding that one person, and those were my parents. On top of that, to get through like that grit that he was talking about, my favorite book, Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. I highly recommend it to every single person here. I've applied it to everywhere in my life, and it's kind of when stuff hits the fan, I look to that, I take ownership in it, I learn from it, and it helps me push forward and through those tough times.
I think for me, it's all mentors. I don't read many like business books or management books or these sorts of things. But having a really amazing mentor can completely change your life. And like I said, there's been several in my life that have completely turned it around. Like I said, I had all these kind of setbacks, and there was this one woman at my first software job that kind of just saw potential in me and kind of promoted me and took me with her from job to job to work there, even found investment for my first company for me. So people like that, people like Travis, that also, you find these relationships, and when you have that good relationship, you kind of want to latch onto it and then work together on everything. And so, like I said, I worked with her on 2 different companies, and I worked with Travis on 3 different companies. And I think it's super critical to find a great mentor that you connect with and work well with.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, is that me? So I would say a great mentor makes you become introspective, right? You take a look at yourself, your flaws, what you're doing well, what you haven't done well, how you can actually, enhance yourself. For me, the biggest mentor was a gentleman called Roy Swan at the Ford Foundation, and I was historically more of an introvert. I always believed in my technical capabilities, but I wasn't, someone who was out networking, schmoozing, building relationships. And in our world, that's a key component, right? If you're in the private equity world, you have to build relationships, not only with founders and entrepreneurs, but also with capital providers. And you're only as good as your network. So that got me out of my shell, and he put me on a different path and definitely pushed me to look outside sort of my comfort zone. So, I think it's all about a mentor who sort of sees the best in you and is going to put you on a path where you dig in deep and can access all that extra greatness that's inside of yourself, right? Because coming out of school, you don't know what potential you have and what you can execute on, and the things you can achieve. And it's really someone seeing all that inside of you and just giving you that nudge to get on the right path. So
that's beautiful. I think there's so much potential and so much worth that we all have, and sometimes it's hard to see that when you're in the comfort zone and you're just starting and everything's so new to you. So if you were to step in a time machine and go back and be able to talk to your 21-year-old self, what message of wisdom would you impart to them?
And it's kind of funny because I am 21. But no, if I look back from when I started, and kind of, oh man, it was tough. When I started, you look at all these big companies like Uber or Amazon, all of them, and they have these overnight or these 17-year overnight successes. But you think, okay, I'm gonna start a company, especially one in tech like what mine is, and think, okay, tomorrow I'm gonna have $30,000 in my bank and it's gonna be great. And kind of looking back, what I tell myself is just slow down. I remember sitting back at my desk launching Double Take, which was literally, I posted something on Instagram and thinking, okay, now everyone's gonna be buying this. I sat there for like 3 hours expecting a ton to come in, and I got absolutely nothing for a couple months actually. So that was great to learn, slow down, see the market, see what you're doing, take it one step at a time. You aren't gonna take over the world right away.
My 21-year-old self was essentially living at a sushi bar and USD, just eating all the time. I'd probably tell myself that money actually is more valuable than sushi, because I didn't know that at the time. I think that's really it. I think I alluded to it earlier, just learning all those business lessons like the value of money and these sorts of things, and time management and all this other stuff. So.
Great. Geraldine?
I was trying to graduate USD at 21.
Right after
I was a senior. I have no clue. I try to tell myself right now to maybe slow down and focus on my health, as if I'm not 110% okay, the business can suffer. But I would tell my 21-year-old self to actually hustle even faster, because I'm young. I have so much to go, and time doesn't wait for you. You know, if you don't hurry up and jump on something, someone else will. Someone else hungry. There's always someone else that's hungry and thirstier than you. So I'd actually tell myself to actually like get moving. Maybe if you party this much, you can also figure something else out as well.
So that's interesting, because I was kind of going to say something along the same lines. When I was 21, I just graduated. I was doing this full time, and we were working 20-hour days. Like, we were up all day, and here we're out preaching this narrative that, we're building a health company. Like, we want people to exercise more and eating healthy foods, and we're not sleeping, we're not eating well ourselves, we're not even going out. Like, there's no wellness there. And we did that for a long time. So I think probably a year and a half. And it wasn't until recently we started bringing people onto the team, and we realized they were trying to do what they saw us doing, and how unhealthy that would be for our culture, that we needed to put some barriers on what we were building if we wanted there to be any, longevity to it.
Mm-hmm.
I would add the same. So at that point in time, I was a grad student in the School of Business. My weekends were grading papers. I was a grad student at the School of Law. I was working in the main library. I didn't have a life, right? It was class, work. So I'd say I should have probably immersed myself more in the campus culture and probably just taken a step back and enjoyed this more.
I like that. So if I heard it correctly, if you haven't started yet, start. If you've already started, slow down and understand it takes a lot of patience.
Slow down.
Take care of yourself and stay engaged with all the opportunities you have in front of you. All right, let's open it up to the audience for some questions.
Thank you guys for coming out. So I was wondering, as an entrepreneur, a lot of the time we think about working for ourselves. What do you think the value is in being a leader, having past experience working for someone else? Like, how does that help you be a better leader?
I think it's kind of a commonly held misbelief that as an entrepreneur, you're working for yourself, because really you're working for your customers, you're working for the businesses that you serve, you're working for your investors. So you actually report to a lot more people than if you were just reporting to your manager. But what was the second part again?
Kind of like, as an employer, as an entrepreneur, you're responsible for a lot of employees, a lot of people. So do you think being on the other end of that, being an employee, would help you be a more effective leader?
I do think it's highly valuable. And I think you spoke to that a bit when you were saying having managers before you. I've never had a job outside of a startup environment. So I worked for a startup in college. It was a very flat organization. So now that we're moving into a space where I am having to manage people, I really don't have any experience doing that or being managed. So I do think there is a lot of value in coming into an entrepreneurial career with, job experience before that.
Thank you.
So I've heard kind of two opposing views on this, but what is your guys' opinion on like having a plan B versus like just quitting your day job and just going like all in? Would you say that it's more important to keep your day job or just kind of go all in?
People ask me this a lot. For all of my companies, I usually didn't quit my day job until we actually had a product with customers with revenue. So like Expensify, I built on the side while I was at Akamai. And once we actually had it in the hands of people and it was growing, I'm like, all right, now I'm going to just do this full time. Same thing, my restaurant point of sale business, I mean, I guess I didn't make money with it, so I never really quit it to work on it full time. But I was like going to school full time. I also had a full-time software job and was building that at the same time. And so at one point, something had to give, so I just stopped going to class. So that I didn't actually fully drop out. I just sort of stopped going and got a bunch of Fs. Yeah, but I never want to tell people like, just if you have an idea, quit your job and make the leap, because that's like, there's no safety net, there's no anything there. So I'm a big fan of building things on the side because, if you work at a normal job, you have a lot of time after the job and on weekends and all this that you could be building things in. So all the companies I built were actually on the side first before joining full time.
I would add, so raising capital always takes longer than you expect, right? Don't quit your job thinking in the next 30 days, I'm going to raise a 2 million Series A and I'm going to have all the money to hire the team and do all the things I need to do. Work towards having a minimally viable product, have at least some plan on or cushion or backup plan on what gets you there. But the other thing I always try and counsel with entrepreneurs is, don't wait until you need money to start raising money, right? It's not going to happen as soon as you think it's going to happen. So start those conversations as soon as possible. Start building that network, those relationships, and just keep at it, right? But I would say quitting your job, it's a big move, right? So again, it all depends on your circumstances and what you have and what you've developed. But ultimately, you want to do it once you at least have a lot of traction, potentially from funding sources.
Kind of my perspective on it, it totally depends, obviously. But in my situation, starting my thing as a freshman, I have the opportunity to not have a plan B, and I've refused to have a plan B for so long now. Now, if I did this 5 years out of college and I started 10 years out of college, started a family, and need to support some people, then having that plan B is crucial. But right now, my plan B is just to make my parents happy. But plan A, I think, has to be 100% what you need to do, what you need to focus on, and plan B and C should be like 10 miles down the road.
Hi, I'm John. I'm a student majoring in entrepreneurship at Hanyang University, Seoul, South Korea. And currently I'm studying English in Q International School. And at the same time, I'm doing on my business in South Korea after getting financial aid from Ministry of SMEs of my government. But I have always fear about death belly, which most startups face within 3 years. So if you have any advice, would you please give me any advice to overcome those kind of situations if I face that kind of death belly? Thank you.
What's Death Valley?
It's kind of entrepreneurship term that I learned in South Korea. Because, most startups faced their dangerous situation, which is a kind of they lose their budget to continue their business, or they face any other situation that they couldn't expect it. So my team is Lean Startup. Actually, we start our business about it was about 6 months. So maybe our team will, I think our team, we can face Death Valley within 3 years. Actually, I'm doing a media business in South Korea. Actually, millennial generation are interested about that, but it's too hard to explain here. So, but I want to know, is there any way or is there any experience to go through those situations that you face, any situation that you couldn't expect before while you are doing your own business?
I think you spoke to this a bit when you were talking about like founders that kind of pivot as they go. I think any company is going to encounter those challenges. So you're going to run into issues with capital, you're going to run into issues with your customers, with your product. It's just how you respond to them. Obviously, I think as much as you can put into your business, there is an element of like luck and how the market is shaping with all businesses as well. But I think if you're a founder and you're experiencing adversity, it is you and your team and how you respond to it that, and obviously the strength of your product, that determines your ability to get through some of those hurdles.
And you should probably also see it coming well before you run out of money. Like Death Valley is basically when you run out of money. And so, you know, if you think you have 3 years of runway, that's actually quite good. Most companies don't have 3 years left of them. But yeah, as she said, you know, if you see that coming, if revenue's not growing and, you know, it's not happening, it's time to pivot, do something else, you know, do something in order to make money so the business can succeed. You know, when Google was about, I think it was somewhere between 1 and 3 months away from going out of business when they're like, all right, fine, let's put ads on the site. We'll see what happens. You know, like they were about to shut their doors and then they just said, let's just throw an ad on there and see what happens. And now they're like one of the most valuable companies in the world. Similarly, YouTube was 3 months from shutting down because their server costs were so high for streaming video. And so they essentially just sold to Google for 1.8 billion just because they're like, well, we're going to run out of money anyway. We might as well sell and make something out of it. So I think, yeah. I don't know if that answered your question.
And I know this is cliche, but keep your overhead cost structure as variable as possible. Because that's the one lever you have control over, right? Is what's my cost structure? What's my cash burn? What's my runway? Can I make some tweaks in terms of my cost structure to give me more runway in terms of keeping the lights on? And sometimes, you know, it's easy to build out a team super fast as you think the market's going to come. And if it takes longer than you're expecting, you should at least have some flexibility on around, can you scale the business back? Can you scale back the infrastructure? Keep your core product running, but give yourself a little more opportunity to get across that hurdle, right? So you can come out the other side probably in a better position.
Thank you.
Great. Let's do 2 more questions.
Hi, my question is actually for Hope. You mentioned about, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Hi. So you mentioned about just to like develop your people skills. And as you see, more and more startups are actually working in a virtual environment these days. And typically there is no physical contact between employees and co-founders. How do you think, or what kind of mechanisms do you think an entrepreneur can actually implement in his or her business to be able to build that physical touch and enhance their people skills?
That's actually a great question. So we have a number of companies with a very large distributed workforce where building culture is difficult because no one comes to the office, right? Everyone's in, you know, various home offices, different footprints. But we think there is importance in utilizing online tools to drive not only employee engagement, but also building relationships across the workforce. So one of the things we try and encourage with our portfolio companies that have a distributed workforce is try and do, you know, an employee day, whether it's a barbecue, whether it's just a 5K run, a fun day, where everyone comes together to one location and you get to build relationships that way. Because I think from our perspective, culture is important. It's one of those key things that just helps build and that bond between the team. And so, and it's not easy because there's no one real approach that works. Situations are different and needs are different by industry. But it's something the CEO has to really work hard at because it's a big challenge, and if you're going to scale and grow a company, especially where you have a distributed workforce, then your challenge isn't just really keeping everyone on the same page and all buying into the same vision and all understanding what you're trying to achieve as a company, especially where you don't meet regularly and get to talk about what you're trying to do and execute on, it becomes even harder. So you have to get a little more creative in terms of how you connect with the team.
Thank you.
I have a specific answer to that too, because, well, we dealt with a lot of remote workers at Uber, but 2 companies before that, Red Swoosh, we had one engineer from Australia. And so what we did, there was 4 of us engineers at a circular table. We set up, this guy was Tom, we set up virtual Tom. So there's like a monitor, and essentially from Australia, we built this little robot, and he could control it and look at all of us and talk to all of us in real time. We just set up a permanent video conference. And so every day when he woke up, he'd show up around, I think 11 to 1 p.m. He'd just appear on the screen and be like, hey guys, let's start working. And so it was like he was there, even though he was in Australia and we were in San Francisco. And we did a similar thing. Our 3rd engineer at Uber was from Paris, and until we could get him a visa, he worked remotely and did the exact same thing, where he was just live streaming with us all day. Now in Paris it was tough because he basically pulled an all-nighter every night for 3 months to be on our time zone. But if you're remote, people are in this similar time zone, it becomes much easier. Another thing we did at the last 3 companies I did was once a year, we would actually take all of the employees and we would all go work together from a remote beach somewhere in the world for 6 weeks. And so there's kind of a weird origin story about this that I probably don't have time for now, but it was such an interesting experience to backpack through India with the whole company in a place we didn't know the language, and it was the ultimate team building session, even with the people that were remote. And it gave us a chance to really focus and just build. Obviously, the logistics gets much more complex as the company gets bigger. Uber did it for quite a while, I think. But yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
We got one more question.
Hello, thank you for such a great discussion and sharing your experience. It's really awesome. And my question is, would you ever go back to a full-time job? In what circumstances? And what kind of job do you like to do unless running your own company? I think it's 2, 3 of us maybe who are currently doing your own business, but everyone answer. Thank you.
I've seen my job, quote unquote, evolve so much over the last 18 months. My hope is that it'll just continue to evolve. So going from just the 2 of us in our house to ideally having multiple offices, distributed team, and running that. And I see that as kind of the next 10 years of my life, a good chunk of it. And then I probably just want to do it all again.
I would say if I have 2 home runs, I'm retiring at 40. So that's my goal.
Yeah, I could never. After experiencing the highs and the lows of running your own company, even if Double Take failed tomorrow, there's no way I could even think about going back into getting a full-time job. I know my parents 2 summers ago, they didn't force me, but they strongly encouraged me to get an internship just to see what it's like. And I spent the entire summer hating it and actually went on 3-hour breaks and worked on Double Take the entire time. Wasn't good for the company, but whatever. But my point is, after experiencing going through what you have, I could never go back. And I hope to never go back.
I don't see anything wrong in a full-time job. When I was here at USD, that's all I was aspiring to do, get good grades, graduate. Hopefully, one of the internships I had will hire me full-time. I wanted benefits, I wanted 401k. I had my list of what I was expecting. And I was pretty much there. For me, everything I had studied, everything I had internship for and whatnot, everything was pretty much coming together to what, making my parents proud for coming to school and getting my job. And, for me, it was more of a situation where, is this going to be me for the rest of my life? I really didn't like it. And if Holy Matcha failed, I'd probably just redo it. But one promise I made to myself is I will never let it fail. So for me, you can either see the glass half full or half empty. And like I said, my life, doubts, fear, failure, that doesn't rule me. All of that's an emotional thing, and I'm not emotional when it comes to business. Everything has a solution, whether you like it or not is different, but I'm not emotional, so I don't live my life thinking, if this fails, I'm gonna go. It's a little too emotional for me. So for me, coming from a full-time job, I have mad respect for it. I love it, but I think that I had to go from a full-time job to having my own business to really appreciate, this side of life. But there's absolutely no way that I would let my child fail. It's impossible. I don't have children. This is my child. This is my everything. So I give it my all, and I will always, always keep on fighting for it.
Yeah, I think it's important also to just figure out if a full-time job is what's for you versus starting a company is what's for you. Like, I went through many phases. I was a full-time teacher at first. I loved teaching, but didn't enjoy the bureaucracy. Then I went to a full-time software job and similarly didn't enjoy that. Then I was like, I'm going to be a professor and get a PhD. Turns out academia is even more bureaucracy than like full-time jobs. And then I sort of, again, accidentally starting this company for my friend for the sushi bar. Suddenly it was a place where I felt like I was in control. I could move as fast as I wanted to. I wasn't being slowed down in these ways. And so it just suited me, but some people like full-time jobs and that structure and these sorts of things. So I think the most important thing is to find out what you enjoy. Don't be an entrepreneur just because you heard it's cool, because it actually kind of sucks sometimes. In fact, most of the time. But if you really are passionate about it and it really drives you and you get excited to go and do it every morning, that's when you should do it.
Just to add one thing, I think, based on my background, I was making sandwiches in La Paloma. I was cleaning the floors, wipe the floors. So I think at the end of the day, don't count yourself out. There's so many opportunities out there. Just focus. The present moment shouldn't define where you want to end up, right? Keep an eye on the prize and go execute. That's literally what it comes down to.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. And I'm so excited that the students will have another opportunity to engage with all of you on a speed networking session. And I'm going to invite Dr. Amit Kakad up to share a little bit more about the next portion of the night. Thank you.